All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 108 of the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host today, Julian Gill, and I am joined by a stranger in a St. Louis cab, Lonnie.
What's up?
St. Louis Kiss, welcome back. It's been a while.
Glad to be back. It's been too long.
Excellent. Marcus Almighty, Mark. As always.
Hello.
Thank you. And 69th Blizzard Ken. Welcome back. Well, we don't really have too much of a topic today. So that'll be all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Now, today's topic is really, we were going to do this a little bit earlier in the year, but schedules being what they were, we just never really got around to looking back at 2016 and, talking about some of the high points and low points and other stuff that happened during the year that we may, want to kind of revisit. We're not going to go sequentially month by month because, you know what, we didn't do any preparation for the show, so we're going to completely wing it and just, really see what pops to mind when talking about 2016 in terms of KISS. Is it a good year? Is it a bad year? Is it an indifferent year? I think for me, the standout things from 2016 were, number one, Ace Frehley's Origins Volume 1 album, which, if my glasses weren't fogging up and I could see the screen, I believe it came out in April. Damn it, too close to my face. And the other release, of course, musically, was Kiss's Kiss Rocks Vegas, which came out in August. So, on the way I look at things musically, and it's whenever something new surfaces, and for everyone to say, but these bootlegs came out. I already had those, so those didn't come out in 2016, so...
I don't like people who brag.
So those shows that surfaced, yes, they indeed did surface, and you know what? They're not stunningly fantastic enough to really get excited about. They're kind of your average mid-70s quality bootlegs, which, anything that is an addition to the KISS library is a good addition, but unless they've got like some, Peter getting in a fight on stage or, Gene falling over or something interesting, they're really all the same. They're kind of cookie cutter by this point. So let's talk about Origins. Have any of you guys listened to that recently? And that is, have any of you listened to that after the month of April last year? Lonnie, since you're back for the first time in a while, I've got to go straight to you there. Origins, how does it live with you now?
Maybe it's because you saw my facial expression. You said, when's the last time you listened to Origins? I was kind of like, I can't say I've listened to it recently at all, honestly. And that's not to take anything away from it. I enjoyed it. I'm not a big cover albums guy. Very rarely do I say, I want to listen to an artist's cover album. I don't put on, if I would listen to Guns N' Roses, I don't put on the Spaghetti Incident. And that's another topic. But if I want to listen to some solo Ace Frehley, I enjoyed Origins, don't get me wrong, but I mean, if I want to listen to some solo Ace Frehley, I want to listen to Space Invader, I want to listen to some Frehley's Comet or Anomaly. It's good, but it's not one of my go-to albums. If I'm going on a car ride for a half hour, 45 minutes, let me listen to that. So I can honestly say I haven't listened to it much, probably since May or June.
Is Ace coming near you?
Maybe a song or two in a rotation when I have a shuffle playlist going, but that's about it.
Is Ace coming near you on this current run of shows? I haven't really looked at.
Personally.
Yeah.
I wish it was. I enjoyed him when I saw him a year and a half ago.
Which actually, Mark, before I go to you, I want to go back to Lonnie. Because I just did remember something that... Yeah, Rock and Brews.
Rock and Brews. I got to meet Gene and Paul.
Yeah, I want to just take a break of talking about Ace and go to St. Louis. You went to the opening of... Where was their restaurant opening for you locally?
It's in Chesterfield. It's about 20 minutes from my house, which is perfect. It's in a not an upper part of town, but a middle to upper part of town. So, I understand the location of it. It's in a huge strip mall, and in the parking lot of a huge strip mall with a bunch of restaurants in front of it. It's in a great location for a restaurant. So me and my buddy Joe Odell went and had a great time. He is a freaking blast. I love that guy. Every time I go out with him, I laugh harder than I do with anyone. But we did the VIP, which was like $200, and you get your picture taken with Gene and Paul. It was guaranteed to get your picture taken with Gene and Paul. And then when you walk in, they gave you this little slip of paper that told you where to get your picture in a couple of days. And it says, it's on our Facebook page, whatever. But then it also says on there, and I still have it in my wallet here, it says, please refrain from asking them to sign any memorabilia, as both Joe and I are walking in with our arms full of memorabilia.
No.
But, so, you walk in to get your picture taken with them, really similar to like a meet and greet. They're just herding you in. You get 2 seconds with them, fist bump them, smile, on to the next guy. And there was I think there was 150 VIPs. And they let us in first. And yeah, you say $200. Well, $200 for 2 seconds with them. But you did get free food and drink while you're there, which is nice. You get dinner out of it. And then they let in other people that are just like regular attendees. And like they had to pay, I don't know, like $100 maybe to get into the event, because the whole restaurant was completely shut down that night unless you had bought a ticket in advance. And then Gene and Paula get done taking their pictures, and they went off into like this VIP section, was kind of roped off with some big burly guys standing in front of it. And
so the kitchen.
Correct. So we're kind of just sitting there, and you can see them where they're at, though. You can still see them where they're at. So we're just kind of standing there watching them, and but we do have our Sharpies out and our memorabilia primed and ready in case they do come out. And Gene came out, and he gets mobbed, just absolutely mobbed. And he could hardly move, and he had a guy next to him. He was trying to, you guys got to back up a step, and he was signing, and he was really cool about it. And then Paul came out first, and he got mobbed. And I got Paul to sign my box set from 2001, the little miniature guitar case.
Nice.
And then all of a sudden, yeah, I'm signing that. And I had a couple other things too. So I was like, I'm right here. I'm going to try to get him. And then all of a sudden he had his back to me. And because of the mob of people, I wasn't able to maneuver myself around to get back in front of him. And in the meantime, Gene comes out, and he gets mobbed immediately too. Probably even worse than Paul did. But Paul's got his back to me, and I'm like, I'm wasting time here. So I go over to Gene, and Gene signs my box set too. I got him to sign that right away. But I was still at a really good prime spot for Gene. And Gene goes up to my buddy Joe, and he signs something for him. And Joe was standing at a table, like a bar height table. And Joe says, hey, you just want to use this table right here to sign stuff? And Gene looks at him and goes, okay, yeah. So he just kind of stood there next to my buddy. And so my buddy got all his stuff signed. Obviously, he keeps handing his stuff.
All out on the table, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
There you go. That's the way to do it.
Right to Joe on this one. And I got Gene to sign a couple more things. And then by that time, I was like, okay, where's Paul at? And Paul had gone back to his little VIP area by that point. So I was like, yeah, okay. But it was really cool. I mean, I looked out and I got 4 signatures in total. And, some people probably didn't get maybe 1 or any. But it was pretty cool. And then they had a cover band playing that night. And they played some Kiss. And then Gene and Paul came out for a check presentation that they donated a lot of the money that they made that night back into community. Nice. And back into members of the armed forces and their usual standard causes that you always hear about Gene and Paul donating to. So it wasn't you kind of felt a little better about it that, my $200 just didn't go to Gene's bankroll. I mean, they wrote some pretty substantial checks that night to these military-based organizations, which was really cool.
So I got to ask you, do you recommend this to, if, Rock and Brews seems to be popping up everywhere now. They seem to have a real game plan for how they want to grow this business into a hard rock. I don't want to say clone, but competitor, I think is probably, a bit
Yeah.
fairer. Do you think it appeals to your average Kiss fan? And is it a little weird? Do you think in the 70s they're getting mobbed by, screaming kids, now they're getting mobbed by middle-aged men with
Right.
memorabilia? I mean,
Slam my guitar case.
yeah.
I enjoy. I've been to one in Redondo Beach, LA, and I've been the one in Kansas City prior to this one opening, and it's good. It's good food. I haven't had a bad meal there, and it is a lot like a Hard Rock in the sense that there's memorabilia on the wall. It's not a Kiss restaurant, and some of the guys are like, "Well, I see some Kiss stuff on the wall, but where's all the Kiss stuff in here?" It's like, well, it's not a Kiss restaurant. And Gene and Paul are smart enough to understand that we're not going to open up a chain of Kiss restaurants nationwide. It's not going to be successful.
Yeah.
They're humble enough to understand that. So, and even when I've been in there before, like, people are like, "Well, why aren't they playing Kiss music all of that?" It's not a Kiss restaurant. They can play other music. And yeah, when I was in there, I think a Tears Are Falling video came on or something. It's in the road. See, it makes Julian happy. It's in the rotation. But and the whole time I was in there, maybe one Kiss song came on. It's not a Kiss restaurant. They did have a Kiss pinball machine in the corner, and
Old or new?
new.
No.
And my buddy Joe, he's such a conniver that he went in there the night before, and he's looking at their pinball machine. Goes, this thing really needs to be cleaned up. I have one at home, and I collect pinball machines. I should come in here tomorrow and clean this thing up for you. So of course he's in there then the next morning cleaning the pinball machine.
Oh, jeez.
It's a mess. But he got he worked in himself a little deal with that too. But anyway, it's not a Kiss restaurant, but it's appealing to like us and people who listen to this show. That's not all we listen to is Kiss. We listen to a variety of music, and for the majority of what we listen to is going to be hard rock and of the same genre as Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they play in there. And it's good food too. So, and they left St. Louis and they went to Oklahoma to do groundbreaking for a new Rock and Brews casino in Oklahoma. So I think that's maybe a safe place to do some testing,
Right.
see if they want to expand on that idea in other markets like a Tupelo, Mississippi, or
it sounds like they already are expanding on what was it last year? Was it January or February that they did the Badlands Pawn? And of course that went tits up at the end of the year when the resolution passed in the state, banning. What was it, interest rates over 36% or something, that they just couldn't run a business not making 36% interest on, short-term loans. So, it sounds like they want to expand both of those things without necessarily getting into the pawn business, and that's pawn, not porn, business. So, it makes sense, casino. If you got some Kiss stuff around, Kiss fans will come. If you've got an opening, Kiss fans will come. It's very much business oriented. So let's move on from the kind of current affairs stuff. Thanks for sharing that with us, Lonnie, because I did want to know. It sounded like a blast, and a lot of Kiss fans won't be afraid of paying a couple $100 to get close and get some autographs.
No, if you're going to pay $1,200 for a pre-show meet and greet, why wouldn't you pay $200 for an autograph with Gene and Paul?
Yep.
For a picture with Gene and Paul and a chance at a couple autographs. So it was a good time.
Let's get back to Origins. And Mark, when's the last time you listened to Origins Volume 1? And, where does it kind of sit for you now?
Well, I listened to it not too long ago, actually. I do this thing every once in a while where I kind of research a producer or a guy who is like a mix engineer and pull out some of the stuff that he's done, and I'm kind of listening to some of this Warren Hurt guy's stuff that he's done in the past, and so I pulled out obviously Origins and Space Invader, and then Aerosmith, Another Dimension, or whatever that record is that he did there.
Right.
Terrible record, but I like researching people's sounds for stuff because not to let out too much out of the bag, but later on in the year, like near toward the end of the year, I'm thinking about doing another single, but getting somebody to maybe mix it like of somebody of that caliber, right? Of that, level. So I like to do a bit of research on it beforehand, before I commit to anything. But I pulled out Origins strictly because of that, and I didn't mind. I mean, sure, some songs are better than others, right? I don't think I can hear Wild Thing again, because I think I've heard that song so many thousands of times. If I hear it one more time, I'm gonna gag myself. But there's other songs on that are not too bad. White Room was pretty good. I mean, I think overall, I think it's sat okay with me. I still like Space Invader better than Origins. I kind of seem to like when he does his own material better than covers. But I think this one song off of Origins that I was kind of surprised with and like hearing is Rock and Roll Hell. I think that was the one song I wasn't expecting to hear from him, and I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't as bad of a train wreck as people probably might have expected it to be. So yeah, it was pretty good. I'd place it in the middle of my Ace Frehley stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool for you to mention about recording and whatnot. I mean, just to go off on another tangent, is what sort of person would you be looking for? Would you be looking from the Canadian point of view or from an industry point of view? I know in Canada, it's very much an at-home recording industry, isn't it? You really celebrate the acts that make it. You celebrate the industry people who become successful and world renowned. Would you be looking, specifically for a Canadian, or would you be looking specifically for a sound that you're looking for?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I've been in contact off and on with one guy who it would be my dream, full circle dream for this to happen. And it almost happened once, and then complications with scheduling happened and stuff like that. But I've been wanting Terry Brown for the longest time.
That was the name I was going to throw out there.
Yeah, to do something with me, and he's done a lot of stuff. Obviously, a lot of Rush stuff. He's done also stuff with with another band like Fate's Warning. He's done a couple of things with them that I really liked, and he's done other things. There's another band, and the name is escaping me now, but they're a band from, I think, Detroit or something. They're a really progressive band, Tiles, that's it. And they're really good, the typical kind of progressive thing, 11-minute songs, all kinds of concept stuff. And, Terry Brown has a definite sound to him. When you hear his stuff, it's very, very tight, very not dry, but all the instrumentation, it has a good soundscape in it. And I've never heard a bad mix that Terry Brown has done. I mean, just listen to Moving Pictures. I mean, that's incredible, the mix on that, And whenever you hear stuff like that, you want to be involved with stuff like that, And then now that Abbey Road, for example, has offered a system where you can take your mixed song, contact a guy like a mastering engineer there, like Sean McGee, for example, and you can contact him, send him your finished songs, and he'll master it for you. I mean, that's like the perfect handshake in my world right there. A Terry Brown mix and a Sean McGee master. I'd be very happy to release that single.
Master by mail. That's really cool. And just to go on about the recording, there's a great article that Chris posted up on the FAQ today, a brief interview with Ace in the San Diego local press, where he mentions that he's just finished building his studio in his new condo, and he's about ready to start doing some recording. So there you go. Maybe starting to get ready with, from the sounds of what he was talking about, it kind of feels more like new music rather than Origins Volume 2. But who knows with Ace, where he wants to go with that. He did also say that Origins, I think, had shifted 100,000 copies or something. So,
that's really good.
Space Invader, pardon me. So, cool stuff nonetheless. So, Ace sounds like he's doing well, and it'll be great to do some more music. I still think he should go back and finish up those demos from '84 and put them out. Ken, where does Origins fit for you now? Have you listened to it at all lately, or has it been sitting in its shrink wrap, still sealed?
No, it's not sealed. No, I think I haven't really listened to it in general, the whole thing through, since it first came out. But I have heard a couple of songs on my kind of just a random, song generation on my iTunes, right? Or iTouch, that's on there that's on iTunes. So I hear a couple come up, and I don't skip them, but I haven't gone back and purposely listened to the Ace album. I think I went back and listened to Fire and Water, or watched the Fire and Water video with Impala, which is was cool. So I know I've gone back and watched that, but otherwise the album I haven't purposely gone back and listened to it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing for me as well. I have not actually listened to that album since probably May, soon after it came out. Listened to it plenty of times. I got very bored of shit like Street Fighting Man. Who else had covered it? I think Molly Crew had done it somewhat recently. Spanish Castle Magic, no. Fire and Water didn't do it for me. That's not the sort of free track I'm into. Emerald, I love. I got to say that if I'm going to pick a standout track, I agree about Rock and Roll Hell. I agree, I really do like Emerald. I like Parasite and Cold Gin. Reinvented his way how he'd record it. But the Kink shit, nothing. The Trogs, I don't care. And Lita Ford, I can't stand. The last time I bought a Lita Ford album was Dancing on the Edge, which kind of says it all. So, Kiss Me Deadly, never bought. I can't stand her. Joan Jett rules. Okay. Simple as that. So, that is one album. Really, I need a drink.
You're not impressing him, Mark.
Let me get my picture of Joan Jett out and see who's going to win this SmackDown. So it hasn't really. I'm not going to say it hasn't stood up because it's a covers album, And just mentioning Joan Jett. When's the last time I listened to the hit list? Well, 1980. What year did it come out? I mean, you just don't listen to covers albums. So let's move on. Paul Stanley Soul Station. Obviously, it's current news. He canceled his current run of shows because he doesn't feel fully recovered from his concussion yet, and that's good. I'm glad he's taking care of his health first and foremost, and hopefully he'll get back out there and do what he's doing. The 3 shows in Southern California, I think it's last February. I've watched a few of the clips. I think it's a good introductory primer to R&B to people who maybe know absolutely nothing about it. There's not exactly anything tremendously fantastic about it. When I think Star Child, I really just want him in grease paint singing his ass off, doing Kiss stuff. I don't really want Paul Stanley to introduce me to R&B any more than I want Peter Criss to introduce me to jazz. I know enough about people who really do know about those topics to kind of to be taken through that if I want to get into that music. Where does Soul Station kind of sit for you? Is it something, Mark, if they came to Canada, would you be like, oh, hell yeah, I'm there?
Honestly, I think I would honestly skip it. I mean, I watched the clips of the shows that he did before, and, it's not terrible. It's not nothing like that, he has to be ashamed about or anything like that, but it's just definitely not something that's up my alley. And just to touch on something really quickly about the whole concussion thing, I think it's a very wise thing that he's not doing those shows and getting fully recovered, because if I can just go on a little small tangent here, last week I severely suffered a bad tear in my wrist, and it's swollen. I can hardly bend it down right now, and if you notice what hand that is, that's this hand. And not being able to grip a guitar right now is something that kind of alarmed me for a couple of days, because I can't remember the last time I haven't picked up a guitar. So this is just a little small, I guess, public service announcement that let musicians heal themselves properly, because if they don't and go back too quickly before healing, they could do more damage to themselves, and you may not have a Star Child on stage, period. So yeah. Don't be bitter about him canceling. That's something he has to take care of for sure. So, but getting back to Soul Station, I mean, it's good. I mean, he doesn't sing the stuff bad. I think he seemed very comfortable on stage singing the material, to be honest. But it's just not something that's in my wheelhouse, I guess, as far as listening. So
Yeah, it's got to be limited consumption, and I think there's a lack of power coming through his vocals to a certain extent. Lonnie, St. Louis, Soul Station.
I'd go because it's Paul, but I'd go for the single reason that it's Paul Stanley.
And he owes you some autographs.
Right, and maybe I can get those 2 autographs that I missed out on last week. So I'd go just because it's Paul Stanley and to support him, because I've supported him and everything he's done for as long as I can remember. And in all honesty, though, I think a Soul Station national tour, I think, would be poorly attended because it's Paul Stanley singing Motown. It's not Paul Stanley coming out. I mean, the Live to Win tour wasn't exactly. I mean, he played small theaters, but it wasn't. And I know it's 10, 11 years ago now, but it wasn't exactly just sold out in minutes because Paul Stanley's coming to town. But not only is Paul Stanley coming to town, but wait, he's not going to play stuff off his '78 solo album, or he's not going to play any Kiss stuff. He's going to do like a Motown show tune review. I think your casual Kiss fan's going to skip it. And, your hardcore fan like me will say, well, I'll go because Paul Stanley's he's in town. What else am I doing on a Wednesday night in St. Louis? So, but at the same time, too, I don't think it's going to attract a whole lot of people that are into that style of music. Oh, Paul Stanley's coming in. He's going to do my type of music. I don't think it's going to attract people that listen to that genre of music either. So I understand why he's keeping it in Southern California and not going through the expense of putting this, for lack of a better term, show on the road.
Yeah, you got to have somewhere for Michael Bolton to go hang out, I guess. And you said the Live to Win thing, and yes, I guess if you're no more likely to have a successful Live to Win tour than you are to have a Soul Station tour. It's just not out there these days. Ken, if he comes up to the Bay Area, I'm gonna go. Simple as that.
Yeah, it's Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
I'm not going.
Wow.
It's I love Paul Stanley, and like Mark, I want to hear him. I want to hear him sing Kiss music. That's the way he does best. Rock music, even. The thing is with Soul Station, everything he has to sing everything in falsetto. It's just pretty much everything he's doing is almost falsetto. And if I want to hear, Let's Stay Together, I'd rather hear it from, was it Al Green, right?
Yeah.
Or if I want to hear Ooh Baby Baby, I want to hear Smokey Robinson. I mean, I love that type of music. I love that older stuff. But I've watched the videos from his other concerts, and it's okay, but I'm not jumping out of my seat and saying this is the greatest thing and it's an improvement. It's not an improvement over. It's a far cry from the original. But yeah, it's good to give some people a touch of Motown and that type of music that let them say, hey, this is some classics from back in the 70s or 60s too, and here we're gonna try to produce them, and the band's good and everything. I can't see it. I can't see paying to go see that, even though again, Paul Stanley is great, but he's great as the ringleader of Kiss, and that's what I want to see him next time I see him.
Now, I would be down for a Paul Stanley Origins Volume 1 album as long as there was only one R&B track. Because when I think about Paul Stanley and the music that he's talked about so many times in interviews has always been stuff that falls far closer to kind of the prism that we'd expect out of Kiss. The Free, the Albert King. Well, obviously, you can just go listen to Love Gun and you got Albert King.
Yes.
I would like to hear a bit more of kind of, Paul to pick 12 or 14 kind of more rock tracks that really mean something to him, and for him to pen an essay for each one of them. And you just know he wasn't growing up listening to R&B. That just is simply not what we know from his book, even if he has an appreciation for the music. So As far as Soul Station goes, if he came to the Bay Area, yeah, I'd go because it's Paul going, and I'd want to support him. He's not about to educate me about R&B. Simple as that, mainly because I'm not educated and I really just don't have that much desire other than what I already know about. I know plenty of R&B music, and I'm cool with what I know. I don't have the itch to dig in any deeper than what I know. And you know what that is? It's probably the top 40 of R&B, just like rock and roll that you hear on the radio. For anyone else tuning in, they're like, oh, I know that. Yeah, no, I'm like that with the R&B stuff I know. So I don't need to get educated by Paul Stanley. But I'm happy he's doing it. Obviously it brings him pleasure, and that's more important than anything else, that he's getting out there, getting his kicks. But, obviously our little panel here has had, some pretty, interesting views on it. Let's move on to Kiss. Kiss hit the road last year. And I got to say, as I was thinking back through what they did, they hit the road with Caleb Johnson.
Right.
And later the Dead Daisies. And that just kind of sums it up for me. Number one, it was minor markets. No offense to you people out there. I've said it before. You live where you live, and I'm glad they went to see you. They didn't come anywhere near me. So I'm just obviously bitter. But, the opening acts there, and you can understand them not doing a good package because they're going to kind of like where the market doesn't support or necessarily require them to have someone of a greater stature than, what was he, American Idol winner, Caleb Johnson. I just it doesn't roll off the tongue any easier than saying Queen with Adam Lambert. It's just Kiss with Caleb Johnson. It's just so mediocre. I mean, get a fucking stage name. Come on. So I was unimpressed by the tour. I thought the set was a good kind of middling greatest hit set for what they're doing. They haven't been a lot of these places for a long time. We've made the argument over and over and over that yes, when you go to a show and they play that shit, that everyone is just, kind of, they recognize that it's friendly, familiar, and safe. And when they play something a little bit deeper, the audience goes dead. It's like Twilight Zone or something. So I just don't think that there was that much effort put into it. And that might be because of the European tour being canceled earlier in the year. That was canceled in February. It was supposed to kick off late April. So I haven't listened to any bootlegs. I downloaded all these torrents from the tour, and I just couldn't be bothered. I wasn't inspired. I didn't care. Where's that tour? Mark, I mean, any interest whatsoever? I mean, did you look back at the Freedom to Rock and go, oh, yeah? Or was it whatever?
Well, honestly, I mean, this is the thing that I found interesting about that tour, is that it started off with a lot of hoopla. Like, I know we were talking about it on the podcast. We were all preparing for it. How's it going to go? We reviewed the first show that they did. We were a little worried because Paul was sounding a little rough there and stuff like that. And then we were, hoping that it was going to get better. And it did get better. I thought that he performed better as time went on. But the thing about this tour that I thought that was interesting is that after a few days, or let me be nicer, after about a week or two, there was very little fanfare. Like, I didn't hear much about this tour at all. It was just like, oh, Kiss played last night. I saw on the board that they played here, and that was about it. I didn't sense any sort of excitement as the tour went on about stuff happening. Like, when they did the reunion tour, I'm not trying to compare those two, but like when they did other tours, I know that there was always some excitement about it, and there was always more. I found that I had more of a craving to follow it and to do stuff like that. And I'm just finding that maybe they're just getting near the end altogether, maybe, and they're just doing it now just for, I don't know, for just to do it and to get some commitments done and just to go to see some markets that they hadn't played in a long time. But I mean, to make another example, I mean, King Crimson have been touring now since 2015, and every time they've been out on tour, I've been like super excited, and they haven't been here in like 2 years. I saw them when they came to Canada, like to Toronto, and I loved it. It was the best $220 I've ever spent in my life. But it was, but I was fifth row. That was fifth row, and it was amazing. Like I was almost in tears when they started the set with Lark's Tongue Part 1. I was like, oh my God, it was like amazing, like, you know. But the thing that I love about what they do on their tour, for example, is they promised the fans that they would put up a soundboard recording of at least one song from every single show they did on their tour, and they did it. And on their, you go to their site, they have the quality of it is so good. I made myself a little live album out of it from all the songs that they did, and they're never repeated, always different songs from the set list, and you can make your own live record out of that tour, and it's phenomenal. The quality is brilliant. They played a good, like, I wish Kiss would do stuff like that again, you know, like, give something to make the tour exciting again. I mean, I just found that my attention to that tour really just went out the window after about a week or so. They didn't do anything to keep my interest in it, you know, whereas bands like that do stuff like that keep me totally interested, you know.
$220. I mean, oh my God. I'm just looking back at my first ever concert ticket, and I've just had my, 30th anniversary, because I went to my first show in January 1987, David Lee Roth with Tesla opening, and I missed Tesla because I had a girlfriend, and yeah, I was 16. How old was I? 15 or something.
Wow.
And I think it was like $10, and now we're up to 220, and you know that's not front row. I mean, shit.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I just got to do this, Mark, because it's in with my ticket stubs that I haven't eBayed. So, let's see if I can. Yeah, there we go. Joan Jett. Yeah.
Ooh.
Screw
There
you,
we go.
Lita. National Stadium, Singapore. So, first real rock concert there. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's weird when you compare what Kiss is doing to what other bands are doing. And I think Mitch LaFon posted a shot of Bon Jovi's latest set list today on Facebook, and all I could think was, holy fuck, I'm glad I'm not at that show. Because you know what? I would take Kiss's greatest hit set over... Maybe I'm just not enough a Bon Jovi fan to want to hear all that new country shit.
It's a lot of new stuff.
It's too much. You know, it's kind of losing the plot and torturing your audience when, you know, was Runaway not even in there? I think it wasn't.
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
No.
No In and Out of Love. A lot of good stuff missing from Slippery. And it was, you know, there was highways and houses.
And Bless This Mess, and like, what? You can play one or two. You can play one. And what Kiss has done is that, you know what, you can play one or two off your new album. But if someone in the audience hasn't bought your new album yet, but they have bought a ticket to come see you, but they haven't bought your new album yet, playing 4 or 5 songs isn't going to convince them to go buy your new album.
And you're making more off the ticket.
Correct.
It's very 90s Bowie of them. It's very 90s Bowie of them. I remember when he used to come out in the 90s, like, I don't want to play any of my old material anymore. And he would just do only new stuff. It's like, oh my God, like, nothing like from, like, you know, Ziggy or any of those records. I only want to do my Outside album. It's like, oh no. You know, like, he got, you know, when people get into that phase, I don't know what they're thinking. Like Iron Maiden did that. They did one tour where they played the whole of their new record, and then for the encore they played like Hallowed Be Thy Name and, you know, Iron Maiden. Is like, oh my God, like the whole audience was like shell shocked.
That was a Matter of Life and Death tour, and I thought that was fucking awesome that they did that. But it was a whole dead.
You guys are not on the same page today.
Oh, we are not.
No.
You know, this is progressive on a different note. You know, King Crimson versus Iron Maiden. I mean, Maiden's pretty proggy, and they've become even more proggy in recent years. But you know, I'm going to go see them when they come out here in July with Ghost opening, just because I want to see Ghost. And but I do hope that they don't fucking play Book of Souls in its entirety, because that's 90 minutes on its own, and Empire of the Clouds or whatever that 18-minute abomination is. No, I don't want to hear it. You know, all of a sudden it makes Kiss, you know, perspective. You know, Lonnie, greatest hits aren't so bad when you're a little bit more of a casual fan looking in, are they?
No, they're not, and I guess we spend a lot of time here on the show, or on the FAQ, or on Facebook or whatever, complaining about the Kiss set list and how I don't need to hear "Look It Up," I don't need to hear "I Love It Loud," but I don't need to hear 5 songs off your new album. I just, especially when you've been around for as long as we're using Bon Jovi as an example, as long as Bon Jovi has as many even radio-friendly hits that they've had over the years, too. I don't need to hear 5 songs off your new album, or however many it was. I'm just spitballing on however songs it was, because I looked at it this morning. But going back to what Kiss did on the tour, they played a pretty safe and a pretty what you would have expected set list on the Freedom to Rock tour. Granted, they did play Flaming Youth. They've kind of gotten into the habit the last few tours of throwing one gem out there, or one rarity, if you want to call it, out there for the hardcore fans. Like on the Def Leppard tour, they did Hide Your Heart, which was new. They hadn't played that on a tour since the Hot in the Shade tour, so it was cool to hear that. And obviously, Flaming Youth, they hadn't played since '76. And I know you can look this stuff up on Google or whatever. I'm sorry to bore the audience, but it's the truth. So, but the other side, like Mark, going back to what Mark was saying, that when they played their first show or two, I was anxious to get up in the morning or kind of follow it live online to see what the set list was. But after a week or two, well, I guess this is the set list every night because nothing's changing. And Mark made the comparison to the reunion tour. And no, we're not going to compare it to the reunion tour. We don't have to compare to that. You can even compare it to Rock the Nation in '04. I was excited every day to get up or follow it that night to see because they would always throw in a different rare song every night. I go, what are they going to play tonight? What are they going to play tonight? And I remember the show that I went to here, it got to that point in the show, and I was like, all right, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? What are they going to play? So there was a reason to follow it or make you want to go to multiple shows, because, well, who knows what they'll play? Maybe they'll play All the Way at the show I go to, or maybe they'll play Love Her All I Can at the show that I go to. But there wasn't any of that. And even in 2009, when they did the tour of North America, it wasn't the same set list every night, because you remember they started in Detroit and they played like that Alive 35 set list. Then they came back out and did a couple news and did Modern Day Delilah and I Was Made for Loving You, maybe, or Detroit Rock City and things like that. And as the tour went on, it kind of morphed a little bit, and they changed up the set list as they went. And it got to the point where they're playing Say Yeah and Modern Day Delilah on that tour, and they had dropped some songs off that Alive 35 set list, like Come On and Love Me all of a sudden was gone, and they kind of did some rearranging. But there wasn't any of that on this tour. It was the same set list every night. Became very predictable, and like what Mark was saying too, is like, oh yeah, Kiss played last night, but it wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to see what happened, because I already know what happened. And I get it. They're in their late 60s. And things aren't going to be. And it isn't 2004 anymore. It isn't 1996 anymore. But they didn't suck you in like they have in the past on tours, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Ken, since we've ignored you for a little while.
Sorry, Ken.
That's all right. I'm listening intently. Well, I kind of understand now more, I think, why Kiss does the set list that they do. It's for those, the casual fan. And it's just, that's the main reason they do it. So we're lucky if they throw us a bone every now and then, like Flaming Youth or maybe something else, Cold Gin, or I don't know, or Strutter. Something they throw in just every now and then, just to keep the the big Kiss fans a little bit somewhat satisfied. At least I think that on this last tour they tried a little bit of that. I guess they played Flaming Youth over and over, but at least it was a song that was never in the set list for however many years. So I understand it. And the thing is, though, yeah, they didn't, like Julian said, they didn't come around this area over here anywhere near. And it was kind of a bummer from that standpoint. But, you know, I'll just have to wait, and hopefully they'll be back maybe next summer or
this fall, I hope.
Or fall, or summer into fall. I'm hoping. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that Europe tour that was announced for this year has not expanded. I was expecting, a few additional dates to pop up here and there, hopefully giving me a reason to fly. But it's not. So obviously it's what they want it to be, or all they can have it be. It doesn't really matter. I mean, looking back to last year and the live performances, I think they totally killed it in terms of Flaming Youth, because they also now have us thinking along the lines of, well, Hide Your Heart's an acceptable deep cut. Tears Are Falling is an acceptable deep cut. Ladies' Room, Strutter. That we will now accept those.
I'm not accepting Strutter as a deep cut.
Strutter.
Parasite. We're so desperate for something different and away from what has now been kind of distilled down to a 16-song set. And yeah, I understand, again, with age comes, a need to take it a bit easier night after night and not go through, a tremendously long set, But come on, this band never did tremendously long sets until, probably Revenge Tour, maybe Hot in the Shade. Before then it's basically 75, 80 minutes, and fuck how fast they played in the 80s. That show was over in a flash, I'm sure, says the guy who never made it to any show in the 1980s. Yes, it's like that. So, now we're back to the shorter sets. If they're only going to throw one song in, then they absolutely hit it out of the park with Flaming Youth. They also totally hit it out of the park when they went on the cruise and did the Creatures theme and threw in, I'm going to call it just one song, putting Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, a song that never performed by Kiss. Keep Me Coming had been, Creatures of the Night had been, Rock and Roll Hell had been, and Radioactive had been, all performed by Kiss. But there's one song, again, that had never been done. They absolutely nailed it. The little mini, tank stage, the costumes. And, I got to applaud them. They kept those costumes for the additional dates afterwards. And for that one show in Mexico, at least, they kept the set list, which, absolutely stunned me when the first reports came in from that show that they had actually stayed very close to that set. I think they threw I Was Made for Loving You in because it had been such a massive hit in Mexico. And I'm talking about, I think Monterey was the festival with Twisted Sister. So that was absolutely stunning. And musically, that was a high point for me, because after we get through the Freedom to Rock tour, which, it was okay. I'm going to call it mediocre on a Kiss level. We're like talking Paul Stanley reviewing a Kiss album. Well, it's a great album. It's just not a great Kiss album. Well, it's a great tour, just not a great Kiss tour. The Mexico stuff is probably the coolest, to see them outside of the boat where you pay a premium. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people who went on the cruise were pissed that they did that at a festival, something that they had paid, kind of paid exclusively. But, I'm going to give props to Kiss in 2016 for performing as Creatures. Ken, what did that do for you as the guy who saw 3 shows?
Yeah, well, I thought it was very cool that they, brought back the costumes, first of all, and then, played more cuts off of Creatures, so that was very cool. And plus their attempt, at the tank stage, which was, it's like you said, it's a mini version, and that's one of could be my favorite, live makeup tour for Kiss, that Creatures tour, back in the early 80s. So yeah, I thought it was cool. It's just kind of, I think it was cool for the people that didn't get to see Kiss with a tank stage and do and see those costumes. I think those costumes are much better than their monster costumes. They just work much better. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's less flash on them or whatever. It's just better. So yeah, I thought it was very cool that they did that for the fans.
Excellent. I want to ask you one question about the Creatures tour, because I've been reading some stuff from like some reviews from the Asylum era, and a lot of them are mentioning that there's lots of lights, lots of flash, but the pyro seems to happen right at the beginning of the show and right at the end of the show. How was it during the Creatures tour? Was pyro and that tank, was it smoking and kind of getting used throughout the show? And were there concussions and flash pots going off throughout the show? Or was it basically at the beginning through Creatures you have a bombastic intro, and then at the end you have the culmination?
I think it was mostly the beginning and the end, and then they did some stuff during the Eric Carr's drum solo. He had that stuff going there. It was smoke coming out of the pipes, the exhaust pipes on the side, and then also I think he might even made up a sound or whatever coming out of the turret. I can't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure that they used all of it for that. I know it moved. The turret moved and when he was doing the drum solo. So I'm pretty sure that sounds about right, because the rest of the show they pretty much just rocked the heck out of the stage, and there was a lot of movement going on the stage with them. I even remember at the end of one of them where Paul Stanley actually went on Gene Simmons' shoulders. He was on Gene Simmons' shoulders. Yeah. I believe the shoulder or piggyback, right? But I think it was the shoulder. But I know he had him on his back for sure. It was around the end of the show. I think I even have a picture of that somewhere. I have to dig it out.
Very, very AC/DC.
Yeah. So maybe they were kind of going for that. But it was just the show itself of them, their energy and the music was. You didn't need all that pyro. You didn't need it going off every song, or a ton of times during the songs like they do today. They do a lot of, every song is going to have pyro or a blast or fire or something going on pretty much these days.
Yeah, very cool. That's why we need a Pro Shot Creatures tour show. Mark.
Oh, for sure. Creatures
work for you as a theme?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when they announced it, that they were going to do it on the cruise there. I was very excited for the people that were going to be going for it, because, I mean, the year before they did the Alive one, which I thought was sort of a cop-out one, because they pretty much play Alive every night, like in concert. If you think about it, they're playing most of those songs anyways, right? But I think Creatures was something that got me excited. And see, this is what I'm talking about from before. That got me excited. That got my attention. That made me want to go and look on their site to see what was going on, because as a young fan, back in the day when I started going to like those conventions and stuff, one of my very first VHS concerts that I ever got was the Creatures of the Night Montreal show. And I remember bringing that home and I was like, wow, like watching it, because I never saw, the tank stage and stuff like that before. And I thought it was like phenomenal, and it was such a, amazing show. And I was always into Creatures, and then Creatures became one of my, favorite records later on. And then as I became got into the music business more and started getting into production and stuff like that, Creatures again became a favorite of mine because of how it was engineered. And I just overanalyzed that record to death sometimes. Like, what did they do for the reverb here? How did they gate the drums like that? How, reading articles everywhere, about them putting speakers in the bathroom to get that certain echo in certain spots. Like, I just went like off the rails, like trying to learn about that stuff because of that album. So whenever I hear something about Creatures, it immediately perks my ears up and gets my attention. And then when they started showing they showed the picture with them with those outfits like a few months before they did the cruise, right? So I was like, wow, look at that. They're using the one piece jumper there for Tommy there with the lightning bolt. You know, like I was surprised that they went to that extreme with it. I mean, Paul even had the raccoon tail there. That's like attention to detail, right? So I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a good theme. My only negative point is that I wasn't able to go on the cruise. That's the only bad thing I can say. But I wish I would have went, because that set list was fantastic, and I was overjoyed when I saw them do not only, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, but I loved that they did, Radioactive. I thought they did that really well on stage. I was like, wow, like, I just have nothing bad to say about that.
No, it sounded good. Radioactive obviously is a standout as well, for this lineup to have performed. So, Kiss Cruise 7, I think they've started booking for. I don't think they've announced a theme yet for that, so that'll probably be something to look out this year. Going back to 2016, I think what stands out is probably got to be the most obvious thing, and it's Kiss Rocks Vegas being released. We did an episode on that, and I kind of, just said how much it meant to me because I was there. I got to experience it, and then to have a release, I guess it's for the people, kind of like those guys who went to the, Alive 2, or to the Revenge Tour for Alive 3, that here is kind of your souvenir from that experience in some ways. I've listened to Rocks Vegas quite a few times last year. I'm surprised how many times I actually did listen to the whole thing, including the acoustic. I was pretty sure that it wasn't going to hold a candle, and it doesn't, to the 1996 MTV Unplugged release. It's just that's just so burned on my brain. But the live album and how they've presented it, I just find incredibly endearing. I'm surprised by how many times I've listened to it. It's one that I thought that I would, purchase, listen to a few times, and it would go on the shelf with the rest of them. I actually had to go out and buy the little DVD CD pack, so that it would fit in with the rest of the CDs in the collection. It felt there was a space missing. I had no intention on doing that, after getting the LP, and I think I ended up with one copy of the LP, two copies of the, the UK and the American deluxe edition. But it's really, it brings back happy memories, and I think they presented such an honest document of it, even with a couple little things here and there that are obviously corrected or masked in a way, that I'm amazed. Symphony's never been played since 2003, never will be, but this one has been a lot, so that's kind of odd. Lonnie, how does Rocks Vegas sit with you nowadays?
I agree with you, actually. I listened to it this morning when I ran, but I wanted to listen to this morning. So, I mean, I've revisited it quite a bit. And to your point, Julian, when I bought it, I thought the same thing, that I'll get it because obviously I went to a couple of Vegas shows. I want to have it. It's a Kiss release, and I thought that, well, it'll probably end up on my shelf like some of those instant lives did. That, well, it's a good recording, but how often am I really going to go back and listen to Kiss in San Antonio, Texas from 2004? Probably not that much. But I have gone back to it, and I've surprised myself with that. Oh, hey, you know what? I want to listen to that again because I really like the way Parasite sounded, and I really, like the way certain songs or the way they're tied in together, and it's just, to what Julian was saying, it's a great memento from the experience that I had there as well. So, and it's great. It really is. The audio on there is crisp. It's clean. They sound really good, and I still enjoy it. So I can't say enough good things about it. I mean, I praised it when we did this review of it back in August when it came out, and I'll still praise it today. It stands up, actually. And no, I don't think I've ever said when I go for a run in the morning I want to listen to the Symphony show. So unless you
want to be running from something,
right? I might cramp up or something and be like, oh, so I'm not breathing right here. So I've enjoyed it, and I've just to echo what Julian said. I've surprised myself that I've gone back to it as much as I have.
Bravo, Kiss. Ken, how about you? Where does it kind of sit with you these days?
I think more so the video, the Blu-ray. I've gone back to that and watched that a bit. I enjoy it from that standpoint. I mean, it just looks so darn crystal clear on Blu-ray. It just looks, it's great. And actually, I want to say it sounds better coming out of my TV than it does on vinyl. Because I thought the vinyl was okay sounding, and I think it's possible because I don't know if I heard this, that it was converted from digital to vinyl, which is a little different. And maybe Mark knows more about that, what happened with that. But that's where I went to, the video. But not a lot, but a little bit here and there.
If you watch that Blu-ray on a 4K TV, I mean, it just looks incredible. I mean, they did the Blu-ray itself is just absolutely phenomenal how crisp that thing looks. And they did a fantastic. I mean, I know it looks
great.
A year and a half for it to come out since the show, but it's worth the wait. It's fantastic.
So when they finally resurrect the Alive 2 theme for the 40th anniversary, which obviously is 1977, so that is now. So that means Kiss will do it in 2019.
His math is a little off.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be close. I would just love for them to do the same sort of treatment that they did with Kiss Rocks Vegas. They had the right camera angles. They had the right kind of speed of edits. It wasn't giving me seizures like Rock the Nation, which will never be played again for me.
Wow.
That and Symphony, those two are complete and utter duds for my brain. I just cannot watch either of them.
I can't watch. Symphony's worse than Rock the Nation.
Symphony's dreadful. I mean,
my gosh.
It's just garbage. And if you like it, fine. I don't. I don't really like broccoli either. It's nothing worth discussing. I do not like it, but my critical, kind of appraisal of it is that the edits are just too jumpy. They're like all over the place. They're seizure inducing. They're just like a freaking strobe light. So I don't like it. I don't like Rock of the Nation, but they absolutely nailed the clarity. Maybe it's modern technology really captured it, so it's so vivid it drags you in. And I don't have a 4K TV. Mine's more like a CGA screen compared to that. So for those of you who know what CGA is,
VGA.
Yeah, well before that.
Yeah.
So I would love for them to revisit kind of the 77, 78 tour.
You want to watch it on a 4K TV? Come on over tonight. We can sit on the couch together and watch it.
Yeah, be right over. I'll be sleeping. Sorry. Yeah, not watching any Kiss. Mark, what about you? I mean, you speak a language from the studio, so you can address the sonics visually, and also in terms of its content. How does it do for you, looking back?
Again, like you guys, I was kind of surprised actually about how much this stayed in rotation for me after it came out. I really liked it. I got the obviously the vinyl DVD version, but like I said when we reviewed it, my only quirk with that release was that damn DVD that was sitting in there, because I knew that because they didn't put it in a separate case, you take it out and you have nothing to put it in. Now, I'm not going to keep putting it back in there, putting the record back. If I want to watch the video, because I'm a big video person. I like watching, like Ken. I probably watch the concert video more than I listen to the album itself. So, of course, to remedy that, I went out and bought the Blu-ray version so that I could just watch it from there instead of having to drag it out all the time from there.
You are what they wanted. They got you.
Yeah.
They made you buy it twice, Mark.
Well, because I wanted the
sucker.
vinyl, right? I wanted to buy the vinyl. And for me, the vinyl part of it, I thought they did pretty good. I know what you guys are talking about as far as the digital, the pressing from a digital source. Now, probably because the Blu-ray audio part of it had to be a digital source. Now, either they probably took the audio source from the same source and used that and burned the lacquer to make the album from that source. Now, it's not exactly bad to do that, but you have to be very careful when you do that, because those lacquering needles, when they make the lacquer there from the machine there, they really don't like anything over 15,000 K there. It starts to really heat up the needle. So, and as we all know, Blu-ray audio is spectrally, fantastic. So they probably had to for sure do some sort of alteration EQ-wise to the audio from there, because there's no way they could have used it as is. It would have just completely fried the lacquer with that, right? So
one gouge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they melted the whole thing probably, but that's probably why there is maybe in some people's ears issues to it, But I think overall it still sounds pretty good. I mean, there are definitely other records that I heard that sound a lot worse. Like when you have these situations where people take a CD and burn a lacquer off of a CD copy of a record. That's just, oh God, like those albums sound brutal, But I think overall it sounds pretty good. The video part of it, I agree with everybody. It looks fantastic. And luckily, because the last year or so, I'd bought myself a better television finally, a nice LG TV. So it looked really great, And, having decent stereo speakers now, in the room with it helps a lot, because like I said, the audio on the Blu-ray is what I was really impressed with, because I'm really into the whole Blu-ray 24-bit audio now, looking into that and the dynamics behind it and how to make a great sounding 24-bit even for my own material, right? So it's really well done. I mean, I'll recommend the Blu-ray every day and Sunday to people to buy it if you have a good system, because it sounds good, it looks good, And, the vinyl, it sounds good. And for different people with different stereos, it's going to sound different. If you have a shitty Crosley little crappy turntable, yeah, sure, it might not sound too great. But if you have some really high-end, Newmark, system or something, then maybe it might sound considerably better. Or maybe it might show some of the limitations a bit more. But, I have a kind of middle-of-the-road, old-style tube turntable combination system to my father for me, before he passed away, he had fixed for me, and it's total 70s, this thing, but I love it. There's something about the sound of it, because even when I turn it on, it does that little like crackle in it, because it's so tube-ish, and stuff.
Yeah.
But it sounds, but you know what? When I put on those 70s pressing Kiss records, it sounds unbelievable on that stereo. I can't even explain to you the difference between listening on that stereo than a newer one, But it's, for my money, I think that there's nothing I would knock about the Vegas package. I like it. I think the vinyl turned out good. Sure, if they would have did a separate recording to, let's say, a 2-track machine live on spot, then maybe they could have made a better vinyl transfer for it. But I don't think there's anything there that Joe Average can sit there and say, no, I think they're something's wrong in the 8K region there. I don't think anyone's going to pick up on it.
Saying that.
That is,
Yeah.
Joe Average is doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, well,
Frozen.
So I think that it's a good package. Most importantly, I think for people is that as long as it really looks good, they're into it, they're interested, they want to watch it, right? And I think they did a brilliant job with that. And again, with that series of shows, I know I was interested. I was online checking out what was going on when they showed the helicopter footage and stuff like that. They really promoted it well, and that's again the kind of thing that they should keep in mind next time. Keep people's interest in there. Do little things that keep people interested. Keep yourself in the news, and then people will follow it, and it'll be a better result.
I'd love for them to do another residency. That'd be one of the things. So those are some of the things looking back at 2016. I guess those are the main ones. Let's, before we wrap up today, talk about some of the things that we'd still hope to see from the band or former members this year. We're now at the end of January, and all we have so far to look forward to is obviously Kiss Cruise 7. I'm not going. So all of you people who are getting your reservations now, enjoy. Look forward to those reports again this year. But it's just one of those things. I can't take the time out to go and do that, unfortunately. They've also announced the European tour. I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't heard any rumors or anything about what they might be doing in terms of theme, in terms of set. But they haven't been to Europe in a few years, so my expectations are not particularly great. I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of similar to Freedom to Rock, that they throw a single bone out there for the diehards to drool about, and the rest of it's kind of, standard. What do we want musically? I think people keep kind of saying new album. I don't see it happening in 2017, even if they start now. Simple as that. It just takes Kiss so long to do anything. They're kind of like a dinosaur in terms of the nervous system is so slow that the animal didn't know it was dead until after it had already died. So Kiss doesn't really get around to doing anything because they just don't, kind of like have any urgency. They don't see the end as nigh. They're just... I might do an album. Gene says, there's not a business model. And then Ace Frehley pops into my head with his profit and loss statement. So there might be new Kiss music. I want to see new music from Brews this year. It's been
a while since BK3.
7 years since BK3. That's far too long.
I enjoyed that.
BK3 was incredible, and I would very much like more. But I was listening to Union today, all of the albums, and it's still vibrant. I can't believe how well that actually holds up for me, especially the first album, because Blue Room's, a sack of shit, really. It's just not as well developed. It's not as well lyrically structured. It's kind of too throwaway. It's too simple. Do your own thing. Just compared to Let It Flow, does not compare. It's just wrong to even go there. I would like to see, because Krabby doesn't seem to be doing a whole hell of a lot, him working with Bruce again. And I don't really know if that's going to happen. I know he's done some work with Mick Mars, so I'm almost hoping he doesn't do anything with Bruce because he's, doing MC94 Part 2 with Mick, and maybe a real,
fun too.
Yeah, he's singing, which, would be very fun. But Bruce, gonna see him at the Expo on Saturday, and that would be something. Bruce, have you been working on any music? What are you doing? He shared a few things that he's done with Lisa musically, so that whets my appetite. That's my one thing this year, new music from Bruce. Ace, I'm going to see him next week, and I don't see him having any music ready this year. Meredith, I give up. I would love Vinny to pop up with a release on iTunes just like he did with, Euphoria's up there. Throw something archival, even if it's a freaking soundboard of Invasion from either tour. I mean, I would take that in a moment.
Oh, yeah.
And when I'm mentioning, Bruce being at the Expo, and White Tiger manager and David Donato are going to be there, I would love for them, and that's David and maybe Mark St. John's estate, to put out the second White Tiger album demos. Put them up on iTunes. I know I missed the cassette when it sold on eBay a few years ago, the demo. I would love to hear that stuff this year. So musically, those are kind of my dreams. Kiss, if they do tour, great, in the States. Hopefully they'll come my way. Lonnie, what about you? What do you want out of 2017?
I like your idea about Bruce Kulick doing something, because I thoroughly enjoyed BK3. When that came out, I listened to that nonstop that my neighbors probably got tired of hearing it. I cranked it up so much and listened to it so much. I really enjoyed the hell out of that. And I just really enjoy Bruce in general. Not only on a musician standpoint, but on a personal standpoint too. He couldn't be a more genuine human being than Bruce Kulick. I don't know if I've met anyone more genuine than him. I'm with you that I just don't see anything from Ace. I don't see Peter's rock album miraculously appearing this year either. Kiss, I'm not going to get my hopes up, and I don't really see it happening. I know Paul mentioned at a show right before the cruise that they wanted to do an album in their downtime. It's downtime right now, and Paul's out skiing and unfortunately got a concussion. We're not hearing anything about any kind of music being recorded or any kind of studio time being booked. All we've heard is Gene saying there's not a market to record a Kiss album. So honestly, I don't see it happening. I see us getting some kind of release from Kiss this year, whether it be a deluxe package of some sort, but I don't see new music. So what I'm looking forward to, I think the most in 2017 is the European tour. I want to see what their stage looks like. They're gonna wear the Creatures outfits apparently. Let's recreate a full size Creature stage. That'd be something to get excited about, and something that would make you go look for YouTube clips the next morning. So that's what I'd like.
Especially if they had camera work like Rock Am Ring the other year. Whatever.
Yeah.
Imagine that on a Creature stage.
Imagine if you got like a Pro Shot looking DVD like that, or a Pro Shot show of them in a Creatures tour stage proper, and those outfits. It'd be incredible. That'd be something to look forward to
in 2020.
Right.
Ken, what about you? What would you love to see out of Kiss or any of the related artists this year?
Well, definitely, I agree with you also about Bruce. BK3 for me is kind of like, to me, it's like a revenge too. Just the production, the way he shreds on that album. So that's how I look at that album, and I do love that one. So I hope he does another one, and if it's anything near that, it should be great. As for Ace, I think he could get an album out by the end of the year. I really do. I think he could do it, because I know he's been. I believe he has written a bunch of songs already from interviews I've seen. So I think he'll get one out by the end of the year. Just saying, that's my prediction, I guess, for that. As for Kiss, I'm hoping Gene is doing this bait and switch on us, and kind of doing one of those things where, he's saying no, he's not going to record, or doesn't want to do an album, but then all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, they're announced they're going to do it, have an album out by then, fall or something like that. I would love to see them have an album out. I hope they do. I actually hope they somehow pull off and get an album out for a late summer, fall tour in the U.S. somehow, and promote that. I'm just hoping it's, I guess it's a big hope, but that's what I'd like to see happen with Kiss, and I'd like to hopefully they come out our way here this time, and so we can see them now. Otherwise, for Kiss, the cruise thing, I don't know. I'm not going, I don't think, this time either. But I'm guessing they might do a 77 type theme, whether it's Love Gun or Alive 2. I mean, that's kind of an obvious thing, as we said, but they'll probably do something else crazy. That's
Crazy
totally
Nights theme.
Oh, crazy! Oh,
30th anniversary of Crazy Nights. So this year we're going to get the deluxe edition, which will have that legendary
no,
"Are You Always This Hot?"
So, yeah,
plus a soundboard from the
I'd
tour.
like to see. I'd like to see some special releases, packages of special releases of some classic albums, with that we've talked about before, extra material. Demos in it included, maybe a live DVD of the same that came from the tour of that album, and that sort of thing. I'd love to see them put out something proper, and like you're saying, Julian, if they do more stuff like the Las Vegas, and do it with some other older stuff, and make a nice package out of it, I think people will buy it.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to watch on YouTube, actually, was the Foo Fighters running through their whole Wasting Light album in their rehearsal place. Just stripped down straight through the album, every single song. I would love to see Kiss actually do that in the rehearsal studio for their set. Just film performing the whole damn set, basically, and throw it up on YouTube, or even release it. That'd make a pretty neat release. Another thing that I haven't mentioned, you kind of touched on with demos, is Gene's Monster Box. For any of these guys, I mean, why are they worrying about trying to have a full album. Ace, why doesn't he go back to, put out a single or an EP? 3 songs, here we go, straight up on iTunes. Limited edition pressing on vinyl, 7-inch, or on CD. Kiss, why don't they knock out a couple of songs? Several years ago when the tour happened with Motley Crue put out that Sex single. I mean, yeah, it was shit, but, at least it was a single track that they'd at least... Everyone, I guess, had recorded except for Mick, whoever Nicky's, latest flame was in the songwriting and guitar department. But it was at least new music with Vince singing. So, why is Kiss worrying about an album if there isn't the business model to do such? Why don't they do a song? Why don't they then maybe do another song? Why don't they do a song at a time? Or a couple of songs? Go back to being a single model, because you put that up on iTunes... And that's, what's the base price now on iTunes? $1.29 for current stuff. That's a pretty good margin versus a full album. And if it happens to eventually become an album, then that's fine. They're not putting themselves in a box saying, oh, we got to have a full 14 songs, 16 to have a bonus track for Japan and 1 for a different business model. Stop thinking that way. That's kind of the old way.
A space themey song. And
yeah, we got to have the electric theme, the space theme, and the barroom scene.
And the demonic song.
Yeah. Oh,
enough.
Yeah, enough. Just write some fucking music. And as far as Gene's box goes, I mean, it's becoming... it's like Atlantis at this point. It's like, why don't you just put out Volume 1, pick 10 songs. You just threw away a couple on, the Love Gun Deluxe Edition. Get out there. 10 songs. If the Beatles are going to throw out their 1963 bootleg up on iTunes, all of a sudden it appears one day, Kiss fans would freak out if all of a sudden a digital-only release popped up. And what's it off them? It's profit. It's sitting there doing nothing in the vaults. Dust it off. How much effort does it take? I'm sorry, it does not take that much effort. This is not rocket science. This is money. So, Mark, what do you want to see this year?
Well, what I want to see and what will happen are probably 2 different things, of course. But I again, like you guys, I would really like to see something from Bruce again too. I mean, I really enjoyed that record. It was really well done. One of the surprise songs for me was actually the one that he did with Nick there. What was that song called again?
Oh, the King.
Hand of the King.
Yeah, Hand of the King. Yeah, that I thought that was a really cool song, and I think when I first heard that song, that's what kind of sparked my controversial comments I made dozens of episodes ago, where I suspected that Gene Simmons would be replaced by his son in Kiss years later, right? But in any case, I would like to see them, I'd like to see Kiss make another record. I don't think they're going to make it, just like Julian said, because, again, I think that with Kiss, everything is in snail pace with these guys right now, So I can't imagine it happening. I mean, if it does happen, I will be the happiest guy ever if they do it, because I'd like to, have them do another record. Another thing that I would like for them to do is to do another deluxe edition of something, the Deluxe Alive 2. They're not going to do that either, of course, because it makes so much sense to do it. They're not going to do it, right? So I think that another thing that would make a lot of sense to do, though everyone's been waiting and waiting and waiting for, and could be possibly more, it would be more possible to do this, but again, I don't think will happen, is release that Kissology 4 finally. Like, guys have been sitting on this now for 1,000 years, but it's not going to come out. Of course not, Even if they rename it whatever else, I mean, I don't know what the hell they're waiting for. I mean, but, and again, Gene has all his stuff, and the problem with Gene is that, like you said, Julian, all it would take is to put it up on a digital medium like that. People would go and gladly pay the $1 or whatever for each one, or even whatever, $15 for all 12 that he puts up. But to Gene, he doesn't, to him, that's like peanuts. He thinks big. He thinks large scale. That's peanut brittle money to him. He doesn't want like $1, whatever. He's looking, that's why he doesn't do these kinds of things, because to him, he always equates this kind of digital stuff to like, piddly things. He keeps looking back to like how it was in the 70s and, the big advances and this and that. He still thinks that could happen, so which is just ridiculous, right? And that's why I think that he literally doesn't want to embrace this modern way of doing stuff. I just think that if he keeps ignoring it, that eventually something will happen and it'll go his way, which I don't see it happening myself. But, I am looking forward to seeing what happens on the European tour, of course, just to see, what the new stage set is and stuff like that. But for me, I would be lying if I didn't say that I would hope that maybe they would do a tour that involves Toronto again on the date list, because we haven't seen Kiss around here for a little bit, so I'd love to go and see them. It's been a while, and that's one thing. If there's one thing that I can have a realistic hope for, it's just that. Everything else is just a complete shot in the dark. I don't think any of the other things will happen that I mentioned, but I'm really hoping and keeping my fingers crossed that a Toronto date on a tour will happen.
Well, I'm just going to remind Gene of Ronald Reagan. Trickle-down economics. Gene, let the pennies trickle down, and they become dollars, and the dollars become hundreds of dollars, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But here we are, 2017, and this is the 25th anniversary of Revenge. So take off the fucking makeup, do a deluxe edition of Revenge, and go out on the road with Bruce Kulick. There you go. We've all talked about new music from Bruce. Well, how about new music from Bruce back in Kiss, celebrating Revenge 25?
Wow.
Lonnie, did I just shock
you? That would be the bee's knees. And Julian, you are a one right thinking kind of guy today.
Come on, they'll be done. They'll be in time for October, which is when the original Revenge tour kicked off. And Mark, they went to Toronto that tour, didn't they? And Ken, they came out to what is now my neck of the woods and your neck of the woods. So,
Oakland.
And they're getting older. Take the makeup off.
Take the makeup off. And even if you...
What did we say in that episode about...
Cool.
What did we say in that episode about Gene going solo? That the one image that kind of popped up... it kind of popped up that the image would be him from Revenge Era. So... Yeah. Screw the 30th anniversary of Crazy Nights. 25th of Revenge.
25th of Revenge.
And the 40th.
And the 40th of Live 2. So, Live 2 and Love Gun. So, what's easier? Revenge. Because
Revenge is easy.
They could take that into the theaters. Probably like they should have in 92. So, that's where I want to leave this episode. We've looked back at some of the good stuff from 2016 that still resonates and some of the stuff that doesn't. But also, it's more about looking forward. What do you want to see in 2017 with Kiss? It's very early on in the year, so it's a blank slate at this point. Obviously, Paul's recovery takes priority. He needs to be ready for the run of European dates that have been announced. They need to be happy and ready for the cruise. But there's a whole lot of free time. I think they should definitely think Revenge. That, I kind of talked myself into that, thinking about Bruce and, how good BK3 was, or what he could bring back to the band with his performances. Problem was that BK3 took so long to construct. I mean, that was in progress from 2007, 2008, I think even earlier for him writing. But he certainly brought in a great spectrum of guests, put them in the right place. He didn't just use them gratuitously. Including Nick, you might say, well, fuck it, Simmons' son. Well, you know what? Simmons' son did a really good job on the song he performs on. Gene did a great job on the song he performed on. So, BK3, BK4, As we look forward to the weekend, Ken, it's LA Kiss Expo for us. Everyone else, look forward to reporting on that. I don't know how it's going to pan out in terms of time, able to post things live. But hopefully there'll be other Kiss Expos. I want to get out to some other ones, hopefully on the East Coast. I don't know what Keith's doing with Indy. I think it clashed with the
European tour.
With the European tour. But
usually it's in May.
Yeah, but, why not move it around? Didn't he used to also do one later on in the year? So,
Mm-hmm.
I hope there's another expo for me to travel to this year. It's just one of those things I'm kind of in the mood for. So we'll have to wait and see. It's very early. We've put out some of our wish list, and we'll see how none of it happens, and we'll talk about this again next year. And I guess we'll 1988, we'll be celebrating the anniversary of Smashes.
Ooh.
Yeah, 30th anniversary of Smashes, their only double
Wow.
platinum unmasked album. Yeah, okay, let's not go there. End this episode now. So we thank you for joining us. Do join us on Facebook, on the KissFAQ message board, wherever you listen to this, and chime in with your opinion on what we've talked about today. Also, rate us on iTunes. We'd like to get feedback other than a thumbs down on YouTube and hear from you what you really think about what we're doing on the show. And we do value your opinion. So we thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.